Hey, what's going on? This is Cam Gillette from Smoke Friction, and I got Rahsaan Lacey with me. I actually met Rahsaan Lacey through Facebook. As a musician, you kind of sacrifice your social profile for marketing and networking purposes. Pretty poignant stuff. I was like, dude, I gotta talk to this guy, or at least let him talk to me. So, what's going on, man?
How's it going? Like, I appreciate you kind of reaching out. Like, I know it's awkward, or maybe becoming less awkward for like cold messaging to kind of connect us all, but it's really awkward. Cool. Like,
it's super awkward until it's not. Like, I've asked a couple, like, oh, why? And other people are like, oh, absolutely, bro. Yeah, definitely, man. So
yeah, I'm on the side of like, what do I have to lose, really? Just like a little bit of extra time.
If it's super weird, you'll just log off and never talk to me again.
Exactly. I mean, we're artists anyway. We're bred to be weird, so
yeah. I mean,
just lean into it.
Like this, in some ways, if you're trying to go into entertainment, I think you have to embrace the fact that you're a public figure of sorts. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be you, but it like you have to have a persona where you sell that, and I think it's probably a little bit more important or necessary in entertainment. But
it's weird to kind of try to, I don't know, accept that or own that for the first little bit, but then you kind of become used to it in a way. Like everything, you know, it takes practice, it takes, you know, some extra time, and then it's no longer weird to just hit people up and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this, even though you've never spoken, especially in person. Because like, you're based where again? Raleigh. Yeah, that's right. And I'm out in Charlotte, like 2 hours away. We've never been in the same room as each other, at least to my knowledge, unless you've played.
I think I've liked 2 of your Facebook posts, and that was it. That was enough.
Have you played any shows in Charlotte yet?
Not under my current band.
Okay.
I was supposed to play one, then I got the flu like 2 days before the show. I was like, guys, I can't hang it all right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so there's no way we would have even met in person then, because I never go out to Raleigh.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like, people talk about like, oh, the internet brings us together. I was like, well, I heard this phrase, like, humanity wasn't ready for the internet.
No.
It's like, it's such a tool. Like, people are like, oh, social media like separates us. It's like, no, we're separating us. Social media is like, dude, we just want you to be here. If by becoming better friends with people, you're here, cool. If by becoming worse friends with people, you're here, cool. We don't care. Use it however you want.
Exactly. That's kind of like my goal with what I put out there too. When it comes to like the content that I choose to make, it's more of almost like a public diary in a way. Like, I have these thoughts, or I learn these things, or I have these revelations, or I read this thing, or I listen to this thing, and I want to like tell it to everybody that I possibly can. So it's really just a matter of convenience, because I can get my thoughts and feelings out on the matter, but also in a public forum to where we can kind of open up discussion and share thoughts and share, you know, perspectives in a way that's, you know, adding to the experience of being on the internet, instead of like making it a worse place with, you know, political views and mainly the political stuff.
Yeah, well, again, I've done all this, and then I've tried to amend it. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like, I think a lot of it is like, oh, it's so hard to have like a discussion. I was like, but I think people kind of come into it with sounds so PC here, but like combative language.
Right. You got a chip on your shoulder.
You want to have a discussion about it? We can. I was like, bro, can I start a conversation like that?
Yeah, that's not how I'm trying to be, you know. And so we can come at it from like my side of things, how I view it, and if you have something to add to the discussion or a different point of view, like, I am 100% down to dispute it, because the fact of the matter is, I love being wrong. I love like getting different perspectives and being put in my place, because that means that I learned something. That means that somebody has something valuable to say, and now I'm becoming a more well-rounded person because of what they were able to add to the conversation. You know, and that goes with music, that goes with art, that goes with, you know, anything really. Like, don't ever close yourself off to new stuff like that. But that's where you fall apart.
I had a question, like, I just want to get your thoughts on is, so this is a term that gets thrown a lot around around a lot is the term music community. Like, we want a community of like musicians and bands and stuff. And I think a lot of people, what they really want is something that they can easily get into. It has a like low barrier to entry. It's exactly like the kind of music and kind of people that they want to be around. And it basically gives them everything that they want.
Right.
Which honestly is not a very good community, because if there's not like, in my opinion, like if there's not some level of sacrifice on your part, then you're not going to really feel part of the community. But,
yeah.
So what kind of, if you could pick one, and I guess filter it through as much pragmatism as you want. But like,
of course.
What is, like 5 years from now, what if you could make the Charlotte music communities into something new or better? What would that look like?
For one thing, I think we got to take it upon ourselves as artists to, I guess, if we're going to try to build up this reputation as like an arts town or a music town or whatever we're trying to do this, because like Charlotte's nickname is Banker Town right now. Like that's what people know it as. People don't know it as a destination for music festivals or a destination for arts or anything. They know it as the town you fly into when you're connecting to Miami. You know, they don't really like the city. It lacks an identity. And it lacks an identity because there are so many disparate points of view as to what a scene should be. Where, in my opinion, a scene just needs to be a group of like-minded individuals who recognize the fact that they're all going for the same thing and therefore work as teammates, rather than this crabs in a barrel sort of mindset that I find in a lot of artists, not even just in Charlotte, but even on online spaces. And it's in some ways a little bit worse online because it's just bigger. You know, the internet is the whole world. But that attitude is I've found, and it's not all of Charlotte.
Sure. Right.
Like actually very little of Charlotte is like this, which I can appreciate. But then there's
that's a cancer though.
yeah, that's it.
But when you say like-minded, so I'll give a tiny story. So I was playing a show, I don't know, in Raleigh, and I was playing this like super like feministy punk band, whatever, because it's pretty punk now. Let's just keep it real. Like, and I made some comment about like some artists are like doing this for the art, like this is just like they didn't express themselves, and some people like they enjoy the fame, they enjoy that's kind of their main goal. Is to become like public figures and like the like purest sense, and like they want to get the girls, they want to get the money, and then like that's like a huge driving factor for them. And this girl was like, yeah, like fuck those guys, like they should. I was like who are you to like question that? Like just because they don't have your pure goals of I just want to express themselves, like they're at fault. It's like no. Like, and so in the sense that I'm not pursuing exactly that. I mean, there's some overlap. Sure, I want to be famous and rich and whatever, but like,
hey, it could happen.
That doesn't happen. I could still have
Don't
success.
Count that out.
But if that's somebody else's goal and it's not, I don't think it's incompatible with me. I still feel like I can have a lot of overlap with that person.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we have these ideas, especially like younger bands that haven't had the success that they wanted. They get real cynical. To say like, oh, my intentions are pure. I'm like, dude, you just haven't had the opportunity. You haven't had the trials to sell out yet. You're just back selling out. You know?
So that's a lot to unpack. But I liked the point. Okay, so my definition, I guess, of like-mindedness. I think again, it just comes back to the same goal that we have. No matter who you talk to as an artist, there's some inkling of themselves that they want their art to be how they feed themselves, how they pay their bills, how they keep the lights on, how they keep the gas running, like how they keep the water running, how they feed their families and all that. And anybody who tells you otherwise, if they really truly love the art, is lying to you and lying to themselves. What they have done, and I can speak on this because I did this to myself, and the only reason why I even put myself out there in a manner that you felt the need to reach out to me is because I shut that little voice in my head that said I can't down, or I shut that voice in my head that said that art should be pure, which whatever that means. We're people. We have all sorts of different definitions for everything, morality and whatnot regarding to that. So that's just, that doesn't mean anything. The only thing that has meaning to me is I'm a musician, which is a broad term, but I am that. And I want it to be how I live, you know, and then follow the steps to get there. So when in terms of like a scene identity, I've never met a single person who hasn't eventually like come out to me saying that, yeah, I would love to have it be my career. It's always met, and everybody who denies it always says, but, and then gives excuses. But the scene, but there's no money in it, but you have to sell out, but you have to sell your soul. And those last 2 points especially are my favorites because they usually come from people who have not come close to reaching that as a problem. I've been doing this full time for, I'm going on about 3 years now. And that's a lot of hours. That's a lot of conversations. That's a lot of rejections. That's a lot of letdowns. That's a lot of money stolen. That's just a lot of stuff. And I've never had to deal with a record label coming at me. I've never had to deal with super crazy legal ramifications. None of that, you know. But there's this like underlying fear of problems that don't exist yet, or this underlying fear of I guess overall failure that causes, I think, a lot of artists who have that attitude of what purity is, which is, you know, suffering for your art basically. It causes them to believe that it's necessary, you know, to struggle, because that's that like romantic idea that everybody's fed, non-artists and artists alike, you know, and that's not fair. That's not fair to you as an artist. It's not fair to that individual who believes that they have to suffer, especially. And I guess what I try to do is put out the message that you really, really, really don't have to. I did and made no progress. And then when I stopped suffering, that's when you start to see things moving and shaking, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I see this, I see a lot of envy.
Yes.
Like this is weird. Like, I just thought about this. Like when I was a kid in the club by 50 Cent from like whatever, 10 years ago, he's like, God, yeah. you mad? I thought that you'd be happy I made it. And I was like, there's that thing where if someone is able to achieve something that you wanted and you oft a mentally healthy person was like, that's cool. I'm celebrating that you're part of this community. We did it. You know? Yeah, you got the thing, but like we did this, you know? And right. Like seeing it like, but we had this idea that if it's not us, then fuck those guys, you know?
I went through that for a long, long time. That was like one of those main like things that held me down for sure. Especially having been an alumnus of like such a school like Berkeley, where yeah, like yeah, right. Let me toot my own horn a little bit, but let me not, because I'm in one place and a lot of my classmates are others. You know, like I lived across the hall from J.P. Bouvet, who won the Guitar Center drum off twice, and then they stopped him from competing. You know, I had an ear training class with Betty Who. I had like, you know, I hung out in John Mayer's old room with Charlie Puth a couple times. Like a lot of different circles in and out, but the difference between their paths and mine was basically when they made their decision to start actually making things go for themselves, you know. And mine just came a lot later. But yeah, the impact that they can make and the impact that I can make still has almost the same potential. I'm just a little bit further behind in my own steps. And that in itself is like kind of liberating, because I know, for one thing, like I know what they did. So I'll just follow that. The right answer is already in front of you, you know? So in a way, like waiting until you're mentally ready or waiting until you're emotionally ready or whatever that means for you has its benefits, because you can look at the people that came before you and say, all right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to not do that though, because that's trouble. and then
But
talking
that's
to
the
them.
advantage of a community is you have
Right.
like ideally people above you and people below you and people like kind of like your same level. And honestly, like I'm at this point where like I'm not even sure what my level is. Like I'm like whatever, I'll grow to accept whatever it is. But I'm like maybe this is just my experience, and I'm like I want to build something cool with the people around us. I want us to build a scene. I want us to all work our asses off, and I want us to fail. I want us to try something and fail, and let's try something together and it fail, and then we try something. You're like, that was cool. That was like 2% of that. Let's do that. But
Yeah.
and maybe this is 100% me projecting, but like as soon as if I give a speech like that, they're like, yeah, man, let's go. I'm like, all right, what are you doing Friday? Well, I'm just like, dude, and I've just dozens and dozens of people. This is why when I see you post like of people like you that are willing to actually pay a price for it. So to me, like an important part of a community is not necessarily what the values that bring you in, it's the values that you don't tolerate. So what would you, again, from your ideal perfect music community, what things would you exclude value wise, or like hey if this is really what you're trying to do, we don't really want you here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, but I think that's really funny that you mentioned like being active about exclusion. I think that the exclusion, I think, comes from what you put out there. It comes from what you include, because like when I talk about things like, you know, making music a career, the people that are shutting down to that idea are the people that don't want it anyway. You know, the people that are, you know, not okay with me talking about needing, you know, really good production, for example, to keep up with everybody else who's doing it, you know, and not this idea again of like, oh, it's not pure because you know, tuned your vocals, or it's not pure because you time aligned your guitars or whatever. You know, I'm not talking to them. I'm not talking to them. They don't see my message. They don't pay attention. I'm not on their radar at all. So the end result really is just more positive than that, because you're just bringing people together that have that like-mindedness, you know?
So I guess from a completely practical, how do you handle, because like to me those things are a toxin to the music scene, especially if you're like a young band and you're like, I'm trying, like you're already like nervous as hell, like entering this thing that's a very uncomfortable place, and then you have these people like, yeah, blah blah, you shouldn't do this, and they're like, but this is, I like this part of it, you know, like this is interesting, and they're like, nah, this is not how you do it. I'm like, how can we lower the barrier to entry but still have high expectations? Like give people permission to fail, but also huge incentive to grow. Hey, like just so like, hey, you're a level 3, they're a level 5. That's okay, you know, and you know your place, and go and talk to them and ask questions. And how do we like incentivize level 5 to be like, hey, come and ask me questions, and I'm doing the same thing the level 7 guy, you know, like kind of create this. Like,
I think by first eliminating the barrier of entry to your own vulnerability. When I'll give you an example, I yesterday actually posted something, just an open invitation. Who just wants to talk shop? Like who just wants to get up, talk music? Because I need to know who can kick my butt, and I need to know whose butt I can kick too. You know, who is willing to kind of reach out for help, who is willing to reach down to me, you know, as an individual who's trying to, you know, do their own thing. So a couple of people that reached out to me are, one guy I just talked to, who may even see this. He's toured with like D'Angelo and Dilated Peoples and like all these really really huge bands, you know, in other bands. And I was like, just like, whoa, like that's cool. Like I'm on your radar for some reason, like little old me. Let's get up, let's talk. Like I want to see where your path led you with that, because that's amazing. Another guy, an old schoolmate of mine, was an engineer on Beartooth's recent album.
Nice.
We played in a band together. in college, and so he moved out to LA and he's been doing his thing. But again, he like felt compelled to reach out to me just because, well, for one thing, we're friends. But for another thing, I think deep down he's probably got some stuff that he wants to offer as well. Which, interestingly enough, his suggestion was to move to New York or LA. So, you know, everybody's got their own path and what they see is like the not the right way, but the way that is right for what you want to do. If that makes sense. I think that's kind of where the disconnect happens between the people that want it versus the people that don't want it bad enough. Is doing not what I think. Just again, like there's too much of a perception of or a negative idea as to what the right way should be, because everybody's goals are different. Success is different for everybody.
Yeah, I got some like session cats. Like their goal is to get to the point where they can move to LA and New York and they just play other people's stuff, and that's what they really want to do.
Exactly.
And there's other people's like, dude, I'm just trying to build like this sweet like house show punk community around wherever I happen to be at the time. You know, and they're both good things, and I think they're both completely compatible. And I think
they have a lot of value. They have so much value. Like the DIY punk kid, for example, could still build something that in the future like could pay a ton of people's bills. We saw that with Afropunk Music Festival, which is are you familiar with that fest? Okay, it's really cool. It's this like black alternative music fest that started in basements in Brooklyn. They were free, like it was free admission and donation only up until like 2014, and now it's a ticketed event, just like any old festival. But the year that I went, which was 2012 or 2013, like I got to see Janelle Monáe and Erykah Badu, like Grammy-winning artists. I got to see Trash Talk. I got to see God, who else? Reggie Watts. Like these huge names for absolutely free. And this started in this basement in a brownstone in Brooklyn. So the fact that the other DIY punk kids are saying like, no, you're going to sell out. No, you're going to like, no, you're using your resources to bring something big and wonderful to a lot of people. Like the money isn't the root of all evil. It's the fuel for what you want. It's the fuel for exactly what you need to have, which is that huge festival in the middle of a park that allows people to come in for free and enjoy music that they would otherwise have to pay hundreds of dollars for. And that's amazing to me. But like the idea of success is so, I think, so rigid in so many people's minds that it leads them to believe that success equals selling out, which equals being miserable, which equals money equals the root of all evil. You know, like that's where a lot of people's minds are, because they can't cut themselves a break and saying like, this is okay if this is what you want. This is your calling.
Oh, that's interesting. Like giving yourself permission.
You have to give yourself permission.
I mean, I think there's also like the question of like, it's not, I mean, I'm a big fan of like, it's not so much what you do, but why you do it. And the thing is, it's pretty easy to see what a person does, but it's often hard to get know for sure about why they do something.
Right. Unless you talk to them about it.
Yeah. Because I do X thing because of Y. And you're like, do you really? Are you self-aware? Are you lying to me? Are you marketing yourself? Are you like, because like you know, Bring Me the Horizon. They're each of their albums. They're like very topical. We'll put it that way.
They are
very,
especially this last one.
Topical. Are they doing that because like I'm going to give both sides of it? Are they doing that because like, hey, this is the things I'm trying to express, and the language of how to express that evolves as culture evolves, and it's your job as an artist to be aware of that and to learn to. If you want to say the same thing for 10 years, you're actually going to have to say different things because you have to evolve with the language, and they're trying to maintain that pulse of the culture basically. And so they're updating their language, or they're being really pandery and knowing what the kids will buy, and they change their sound to that so they can be successful. And both of those are completely compatible with what they did. And I think it's more so. I think the second idea kind of works with what they did, because they knew that they would alienate a lot of people. But
they alienated the people that didn't grow up like in the same way that they did. You know, they realized that their language was changing, their dialect was changing, the way they could speak was changing, their voice was changing, and so they had to be true to that. Which happens to be a pop sound, which, say what you will about, you know, what pop music does for people or to people or whatever. But I, in my opinion, don't really see a whole lot of anything wrong with that. Just because I think if they were to if they were to put out the same sounding album for the last 10 years, then we'd have a complaint of the different side, on the different side where, oh, they're doing the same thing they've always done, you know? So you can't please everybody. You shouldn't have to please everybody. So don't please everybody. Just please who is in line with your vision, you know?
Yeah, and I use pop in the sense of there's it's kind of like hip hop versus rap. They're kind of like, one's kind of more of a culture, one's more of a genre, and pop's both. So when I say pop, there's like, all right, this is something that can appeal to the masses intentionally and knowingly. Like it's safer typically, and it's like fake edgy, but that's like the genre things. As far as like a culture definition of pop, that's usually more of an insult in the sense of like, what do you guys want? Okay, well, let's get the best producers in the world, and we're gonna give that to you, and you're gonna buy it. And we're like, okay, sure. And like, we're gonna pinch you 0% because, but you're gonna feel cool listening to it. And they make art like the idea is like basically for 0% art's sake. It's meant to be a product completely.
But I would still argue that the artistry is not necessarily in the performance, but in the crafting and the craftsmanship behind the track. So the artists are, and I've been making that argument for years as I've gotten into production myself, especially more in the pop end of things. There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. It's
so difficult. Pop production is so hard.
It's very hard.
It's only 4 chords.
Forever.
That's why it's hard.
That's why it's hard.
You like tools.
Exactly. It takes forever because you have 4 chords, sure, but there's 30 instruments playing those 4 chords. There's like a single like background melody that no one's going to pay attention to, but you know that if it's not even there, like, it's not going to be the same. And you have all of these things that have to come together and be so perfectly pristine, well crafted. And let's not even get started on the mixing. Oh my God. It's hard. Like you can't cut corners in any of this stuff. So like when you get a top liner or you get like, you know, the final vocalist to come in, yeah, sure. They're really good and they can, you know, lay it down and it can be fairly easy. But then on the other side of things too, the artistry on their part comes from the fact that they practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced so they could come in, lay down everything that they need to do in a day. Sometimes for whole albums. Like I saw the making of, I don't remember what track it was, but Beyonce just like was in a vocal booth for like I think 2 hours into the entire track, leads, backing vocals, all these oohs and ahs. There's one day it'll happen, you know. But that's because she's a master. She is an absolute master of her craft. Now, you know, things have to be cropped and things have to be, you know, tightened up and everything because we're all human. Like none of it was perfect. But
so you're kind of, I guess I hear you kind of, and maybe this is just semantic, but so I'm a web developer, like a software programmer, like my day job, and I'm a musician the rest of the time. And so I have clients and I do some programming work that is like, I want to create this cool thing.
Of course.
That's not really what pays my bills. What pays me is this faceless corporate entity comes as like, hey, we're $1 billion company and we're going to do this thing, this initiative to make billions of more dollars, you know? And is it cool? No, I mean, I enjoy it. I like solving problems just from the technical aspect of it, but there's very little artistry of what I'm doing. It's almost exclusively designed to make money. And I think a lot of the pop music industry is in a similar thing. It's not like, hey, we're not trying to express any ideas. If it happens, cool. But we're like, and if somebody along the line making this objective, like money-based goal does something technically artistic to make it happen, cool. If he doesn't, we don't care. And so as opposed to like, sometimes I code stuff or design stuff that like I'm really passionate about and I'm trying to like, it's my artistry is in this code. You can tell, like, or I can tell. And the same thing with like it's like you put probably way too much effort into your own passion projects, even if they don't make any money, because this is like your expression of yourself. And so one of them is a very corporate thing, and I don't chastise either, but to me, I'd rather see code. I'd rather see like a music project, even if it's a little sloppy, that's more passion driven. And I know that's not the best way to make money, but it's also things that I think. And so in that sense, I do have a pushback on the artistic purity of the pure pop.
See, but there you go. You just rolled your eyes at your own term. So can you really stand behind it? Another point too is that we don't actually know what the true motivation of that artist that's in that booth actually is.
For
like,
sure.
For example, some people, and the more I do, it's funny, the more producing I do, the more I fall in love with performing. Because I think deep down, that's what I truly think is my calling. But I love the production as well. But that it's really just a means to an end to get my songs done quicker, so I don't have to outsource so many things, and I can just get to getting in the room with people that will do it live, and then actually get down to business. Like I love crafting. It's almost like a demo for the performance, and other people are kind of on the opposite end of things, where they perform to like raise the money to put together a really killer studio track because that's where they want their music to shine. But I'm like kind of different, so like if you get someone like I don't know, like we'll stick with Beyonce, who puts on an amazing live show. I feel like she kind of cares about that live show a little bit more than what she can do in the studio. I just have a feeling, because of the theatrics and because of what's really behind it, and because of the price that she believes is the correct value for it, I think that's what she actually really wants to do, or else you'd be able to still see her at the Fillmore or a smaller stage like that, instead of having to go to a stadium to come even close. So I don't think that like fire kind of goes away even as you do get to that level. It just or else you just stop, or else you would just say, I'm done with this. I've arrived.
And then that's where I guess we're like that. And I'm not sure where I have my emotional response, but I'm like I'm trying to. At what point does, like, it's like, to use the analogy I was using before, like at what point does a company come from a small business to a corporation? I mean, right. I don't mean like officially, but like at what point does a musician go from like
emotionally speaking
to like a pandery bullshitter? Like where's that it's that spectrum start moving over? I mean, for a company, I could sort of see it. Like
I think the spectrum sort of moves over as your reach gets bigger and as you start to widen the tip of your bell curve. Like if you look at Ed Sheeran and him being like, technically speaking, he's a master songwriter. The guy can craft a song. Everybody
hopefully can write a melody.
He can write a melody. He can write some lyrics. Like everybody can agree with that. But his earlier material was less acceptable. Or less, not acceptable, but less accessible. That was the right word.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got moms listening to Ed Sheeran, it's no longer cool. As soon as we got moms and grandma listening to Adele, she's no longer like this rebellious figure in the face of pop music who's like going against the curve. And so I think like it's really just the perception of those hardcore fans of those who are now starting to come in. It's that same like it's the inclusion aspect again. Like you're starting to shift your message to speak to your core, but then also these former outsiders. And that's where it starts to kind of become more corporate in the eyes of like the consumer, I think.
And that the artist doesn't even has no control over that.
No,
you don't know what. Once they hit a certain point, they can't have perspective because they're like, I'm in the middle of this. I am so biased. I don't even know like where I'm supposed to be in here.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working on this grind for like 15 years, and then I guess I'm popular now.
I guess I'm popular now. Like, look at Post Malone. look at a guy like him. Like, he's still, you know, as far as anybody can see, just a regular guy who's like, I guess I'm
like
famous.
English
This is
stoner,
kind of cool. Yeah, you know, or like a kid like Justin Bieber who blew up seemingly overnight. Same thing. He didn't know what to do with himself. You know?
Yeah, I was watching this video about it was kind of like trying to have an analysis of Banksy in the sense of like, is Banksy like how true an artist is Banksy, and like it did a good job of not being too snobby, but like it basically says like once you get certain point like deep enough and popularity corrupts, but not in the sense that it's bad. It just you're unable to be very objective. Like as like an unknown band in a local place, like you have a purity that is in the sense that you have just very few market forces affecting you, so you can have focus. You know, like once you start getting any kind of popularity, that it's not just you expressing your ideas; it becomes a two-way conversation, and it's I think it's like a weird two-way conversation because as you're trying to create something that allows you to connect with other people. And any reasonable conversation, you're going to, like you and I, we're just this dance where we're marginally modifying our communication style based on the input that the other person's giving us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's obviously how you have to communicate. If you're just monologuing at someone and just like a boring, like people would say a bad teacher is someone who just kind of like talks to the audience and you could swap out any audience that you wanted. That's a bad
and it doesn't matter. Yeah.
And so at a certain point, you start modifying and trying to be the most effective communicator that you can. But at a certain point, you can never have like the better you get at that, and the bigger and more diverse your audience is, the more you have to make a few more and more modifications to the point where you're like, I remember how many things I've done because it's just like part of how you communicate as a person.
Right. I think like it comes from where the pressure to create actually comes from, you know, when you're first starting out. I think the purity interpretation comes from people that haven't had enough feedback yet. So you're doing this, you're monologuing. All you're doing when you're sitting and you're demoing songs, or you're even like in your band room, like rehearsing your songs, and you're putting them together and you're performing in this small scene. You don't have a whole lot of opportunities to say for other people to say, actually, I prefer it this way, or actually, I think this sound would work better, or you don't have an opportunity for that back and forth that every artist, I think, actually needs in order to really refine things, right? But as you gain more notoriety and more popularity, you start to see those opinions start to come up. And that's where the pressure to change really comes up. But there's a good and bad pressure. You can say like, an example that just popped up in my head was like Jay-Z had some really, really bad reviews for Magna Carta Holy Grail, right? Like that album that Justin Timberlake was all over and stuff like that. And he came back with 444, which is kind of like an answer to the critics. Or a better example, Eminem, like he calls back to his bad releases all the time. Like in Kamikaze, he made fun of the album he put out the year before because it was bad, and he listens to what people have to say and is willing to, even in his own work, self-reference and even sometimes self-deprecate, which can be kind of to a fault. But at the end of the day, it keeps the conversation going.
Oh, because if like it doesn't have to be critic implies that they're there to just critique. But if there's no ability for, like, in some ways, like I'm trying to use the point maturity-wise, where I can create an open dialogue where I want to invite my musician friend to my show. I was like, hey, dude, don't do it tonight because I'm still hyped after the show. But tomorrow, I want you to talk, and I want you to tell me everything that you think could be better.
Exactly.
And some of that's just going to be like, I just don't like blah, blah, blah. I'm not a big Crash Cymbal fan. I don't like breakdowns or whatever. Some of it's like, dude, I think you could do X thing better.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the healthy constructive criticism. That's really what I'm talking about, responding to. And
to me, like I've done this to some degree where I started doing this with a couple of my music friends. They were really nice music friends, so I wasn't too scared about it. but I was like, hey, I'm going to send you a demo. And I trust that you can see through that. I just have like sloppy auto tune on these things that just has the general idea. These are 2 takes. Like,
yeah,
like it's not tight. It's
as
but
raw
this
as
is
it could
the skeleton. You know, like I'll retrack all this once I get it done. I'm like, I'm gonna trust you that you can see through my like, you know, like sloppy templated production on this. But I'm like, I want you to critique this now.
be.
Like
Exactly.
I've
Yeah.
gotten I can name like specific people that like they finish their album and then they send it to me. It's like, hey man, let me know what you think. It's like, bet you just finished this. Like you just finished your album. I'm not gonna critique your album. You're done. Like send me this stuff before you put like 14
Yeah.
compressors on this. Like I'm having trouble. I mean, again, this is 100% just maybe where I am, but like I want people in my life that want me to be better and want me to want them to be better.
Yeah.
And are willing to get legitimate criticism. And I'm like, it's safe, dude. I like what you do. I like your ideas. Just, I think you could, if this is what you're trying to do, this is your goals, I think you could do it better in this way.
Some people don't understand the value in that. That's another one of those purity things. Like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about because you're, you know, this kind of musician or that kind of musician. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, this is how I feel about what you presented to me as an individual. Take that for what you will, but you asked, and I'm gonna give it to you. And for me personally, I want to give it to you in a way of what I would like to see done better within the context of what I know about what you're trying to accomplish too. Like, I'm not gonna say like a punk track should have the polished production that a pop track should. Like that's not the genre. That's not the style. That's not the dialect that you're trying to speak in. So why am I going to put that on you? But if I say like, hey, the timing was a little bit rough here, is that what you intended? If not, then it might be worth going back and fixing that. Because that's another thing too, is like, music and the crafting of it has a lot to do with artistic intention. The more I learn about, especially time, musical time, and just how, like, what goes into it, the more I kind of value little mistakes and little pushes and pulls and things that make it musical. So like when I talk to whether like I'm tracking somebody or whether I'm practicing on my own or my students especially, like I always have them ask, well, okay, sure, you messed up. You're like, you flubbed a note here, or you know, we're a little flat here, or, you know, whatever, but was it non-musical? Like, did it ruin the experience for you? Because it didn't ruin the experience for me. Like 90% of the time, I'm like, you know what, we can let that slide. I like that. And it adds to what would normally be otherwise be like just a normal kind of regular part of the music. Like it's just a note if it were perfect, but here it's like, oh, they put that there. Or then I'll ask them to, okay, now try to do it this time, because it'll probably come out better and even more musically because you're thinking about it and you're actually like putting yourself behind it consciously, whereas before it was just like kind of whatever,
like,
it's coming out.
It's just chaos, like almost using your using your chaos and then fine tuning it.
Exactly.
Like knowing the rules so well and knowing your tendencies so well that you can use it in like a medicated way almost.
Yeah. Like in when I was in school, I took lessons from this bass player by the name of Oscar Niro, who played with Paco de Lucia back in like the 70s and I think early 80s too. So he knew his stuff, and I was like, and my intention with like my performance track was like going to the master of every genre, and I was like, just fill me up. I just need to know. I need to know everything, and I'll deal with the consequences later. But one of those things that he taught me about playing Latin styles was the importance of following the conga drum. Like previously, I'd never even thought to listen to it. And he was like, "No,
auxiliary percussion, you know."
yeah, you know, it's auxiliary percussion, but it's
throw it in like the last thing you track or whatever.
But here's the thing, like it's what drives the dance floor. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Well, you're playing the notes right, but you're not pushing beat 3. He's like, listen to the conga and listen to where they place beat 3 and listen to where the bass is, and they're locked in. Everything's interacting until beat 3. It just comes right together. There's almost like this gravity that sucks the two instruments together. It's amazing. Once you like can hear it, you can unhear it. So it's funny, like I became so immersed in that. Like he told me, like, you really want to know how to play this stuff, learn how to dance. Learn the dance, learn the salsa, learn to merengue, learn all this stuff. And he actually invited me out to this club in Cambridge, Massachusetts that does free salsa lessons. So I was like, all right, what do I have to lose? And sure enough, it made perfect sense. I was like, oh my God, like the conga's here and my foot's going out this way, like right at this moment. Like it's amazing.
Later.
Yeah, you know, three awkward dance sessions later, and like I can play bass a little bit better than before. I'm not going to sound like a Puerto Rican, but you know, I can fool you. But before I wouldn't have been able to even do that. And that's a really powerful thing to sort of like take on those what we kind of see in our perfectly quantized like musical world that is the United States. Wasn't always like that, but it is now. And go outside of that and sort of get used to the other ways that rhythm and tunings and you know tonality are being used and explored, and done in a way that's like still you can still grasp it. You don't know that something is right until you notice that something that you're doing is off.
Yeah, and I think that like relates back to like everybody freaking says this. Like Bring Me the Horizon says like, yeah, we're experimenting a lot with this record. It was like, dude, let's just keep it real. I don't think there's a single bit of experimentation, and then everything you did was like perfect.
Right.
You did everything like by the book, the brand new book, and you're like, but there's nothing like in here that I was like, what, and like just production wise or what, like or anything, and which is fine. But then I realized that it's terrifying to write things that are experimental. Because like, here's the thing. If you do everything by the book, you're still going to get a lot of criticism. Like,
and it can still flop. It can still totally flop.
And if you do something that is like, all right, I'm going to knowingly violate these 2 or 3 rules here, because I think that's what suits this song. The world of criticism that you're going to get on that is just like, boom, you're like, you broke the rules. It's like, yeah, I know. You're like, yeah, you did that wrong. It's like, yeah, I know. I was trying to, but maybe I shouldn't have now, you know? Like,
no, but
I just started sticking my toes into experimental stuff. I was like, God, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I'm so insecure about it.
But there's so much value in like kind of just putting yourself out there like that and kind of seeing what sticks or what people even notice. You know, like I've got like I have a series going on right now where I in kind of a low key effort to learn how to play keys better. I've been doing pop song remixes with like just really nuts jazz harmony. And that's from studying like the work of Jacob Collier, and even as far back as like Ornette Coleman, just like getting real deep into Coltrane. Just it's stupid, very inaccessible. But I make it still very poppy, you know. But I'm like, here's, you know, this really non-functional chord progression that sort of works. So like I spend the process with it as just like kind of poking around. Like this chord, this is good. This can connect to here. Okay, that sucks. So let's replace it here. And then it kind of turns into this thing that sort of works. And it sounds like just dirty loops almost. That's what it's been compared to so far. Even though it's extremely experimental, you kind of trick the listener into still grasping onto something familiar, which is usually like the rhythm section. Like I play bass on these too, so I make my bass lines not too busy or just like graspable enough, and then the drums are just big. The drums are big and they're simple, and so that way you can still nod your head to it, and you're just like, this is still off, but I'm into it.
So you knowingly like meet them where they are. Oh, like
exactly.
Borderline pander in certain ways, so you can really violate certain other rules.
Yeah,
like,
but I don't think it's
experimental music's usually like a dishwasher, like run through like 4 distortion pedals and like
right.
Like, dude, I appreciate that you broke every single rule, but I got nothing to meet you. Like nothing. Like
I can't grab onto any of that. But like that's where the drums are, and just like anything in that point with rhythm, that's how you can reach so many people. I think like and I don't really want to call it pandering either, because it's just it's still me.
Pandering
Like
implies intention. But like,
yeah, it's because it still feels genuine. It still feels like there's still a lot of effort, and there's a lot of like craftsmanship that goes into what I try to build, even though it's relatively quick. But at the end of the day, yeah, there's like just a little hook to still latch onto, with the goal of still like exploring some really just off kilter stuff that sometimes people are too afraid to sort of get into, because it's unsafe, because it's a little bit scary, because there's a lot of pressure to make something of it. But I think if you like remove the pressure, this is just fun to me. It's fun. It's practice. I'm learning, like, and people like it. So I'll take
how
that.
can we create, like, do, like, as an artist and as a fan? So, like, obviously I'm fans of my, like, the people I know as bands around here. How can we create an open dialogue of, like, basically from artist to fans, like, hey, I'm trying to do X thing, and this is what I created. And based off my, like, abilities and time constraints and whatever,
Right.
this is what I actually created. Hey, and this is my intention. And I'm too close to both these things to actually accurately gauge it. Do you think there's a way that we could use social media or some other, like, form of communication? Because as a fan, I'd be like, oh my God, this is exactly, or like, yeah, I want your art to be better. I want to tell you what I think about this, and I want you to be able to create something better because of that dialogue. Do you think there's a way as an artist and a fan to create that conversation, make it normal?
I mean, there are resources available for that exact thing. There's, oh man, I can't remember the name of the website, but I will, when I find it, I'll link it to you. But there are services where you can literally send off your track to like focus groups before you can, actually like distribute it and put it out officially. And these people will just give you criticism. Or I know, have you used SubmitHub yet?
Uh-uh.
Oh man, SubmitHub is the place where you get thicker skin. It's an aggregate of bloggers and playlisters that you can submit your music to, and the paid part of the service is they guarantee you a review. So I've sent, yeah. So they have to send you a certain amount of characters of a review to fulfill their end of things, where you get refunded back credits. Like, so it's like 3 credits per submission, and then they have to respond to you within, I think, 48 hours, or it might be 72. But either way, yeah, there's this stuff out there.
It's SubmitHub.
SubmitHub, yeah, write that down. And but they tend to be, because they're so detached, because they get so many excuse me, submissions, they are just brutal, absolutely, like, relentless.
No time for fields.
Right. They will tell you like, yeah, I wasn't feeling this part here. Sorry. Send us something else next time.
Get good.
Good luck. Get good. Yeah. It's a lot of get good.
I mean, but that's the thing is, like, we're not. I mean, we're all like, we're not good, and that's, I mean, we are where we are, and like that's like a shitty place to like realize. But like as an adult, they're like, I've been convincing myself that I'm adequate or good my entire life. If I had just spent that time just saying like, well, damn it, I'm not that good, and then spend that time getting good, I would probably be good. That's
like, the beauty of it, is that once you kind of accept that you suck, that's when it's time to get work to get better. That's how I learned everything.
Yeah, and it doesn't apply to music. Like, I was like, man, I like in like the dating scene, I was like, I think I'm X. Everybody thinks they're 7. Everybody thinks they're 7. And
yeah, you're not wrong.
Don't think they're 7, or the people who've gotten shat on enough and tested it enough. They're like, actually, I'm probably like a 5.5. Let's just keep it real. Like,
and I think like a good musician, I think, understands that they will forever be a 5.5 in comparison to where they want their next step to be.
And it's not self-deprecation at that point.
It's not. It's not. It's just being
bad.
honest.
You're like, well, no, I could do better.
It's being honest with yourself. Like I always tell people anytime, and I should probably get better at taking compliments because some of these are very genuine, and I feel bad for shooting it down. But really, like I tell people, like if it's with my main instrument, which is the bass, or even instruments that I'm not as strong on, like, hey, you're really good. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm still growing. I'm still trying really hard. Like, you should see the stuff that I won't let you show me because it's really terrible. But in a few years, you're gonna see that stuff. And it's absolutely true. Like,
but I think that relates back to my previous. Can you use that as an opportunity of like, dude, thanks. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. What and like, I don't know how you would structure this conversation to give a random person permission to do this, but like, what in your opinion would be better? Because they don't have to be a musician. It's like people say like, you don't know how to cook, so you can't critique food. It's like, dude, I know if food tastes good.
You know what food tastes like. You know what good food tastes like.
You know what? Like, hey, this made you feel X thing. They're like, that made me feel really uncomfortable. I was like, great, that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
or, like, wow, that was not what I was going for. I
always hit up like people that I know wouldn't love anybody else who's trying to do what I'm trying to do, and I try to gauge their reaction. I try to gauge like how they feel about a track that's like just completely off their radar as far as like what they consider to be their first choice of music. Because if they enjoy it, then that means you really, really have something special. Like the pop fan, especially non-musicians. I value opinions of non-musicians more than I do musicians because they're going purely off of emotional response. They're going purely about. I
appreciated your technicality on that.
Yeah. Like I like that you went. I like that you went to the flat six on the bridge. That was really cool. Like, or nice reverse snare or whatever. You're like, I mean, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you know what it takes to put that together. But how did it make you feel? How does that make you feel? And so it's a different kind of conversation that you have to have, which is the more general conversation too. It's the more generalized conversation that we have to have with the strangers who are going to be streaming our stuff from like from Japan or streaming our stuff from Germany. Like, you're not going to be able to know how they feel about it on a visceral level. You'll just know how much they dig it by your stats, so you have to be really, really smart about how you craft your music and who you want to reach, because you don't want to lose them. You don't want to like not have that message that you're trying to deliver be mistranslated or misconstrued into being something that is uncomfortable where it's supposed to be like, a lot lighter, or really heavy when it's supposed to be more accessible or poppy. You want it to be what it is in your mind. And if it's not matching up with what their perception of it is, then that's a sign that you got more work to do,
Yeah, because like there's this, again, going back to the purity stuff, but like people
it's
say
more
like
intention.
Well, it's just like I used to say this, but like I'm not gonna change for like what other people say. Like, this is my authentic me. I was like, dude, well, maybe the authentic you's just not that good.
It's not that good. No.
It's pure, but that doesn't mean like it's the purest form of you with your 10,000 biases that you won't examine or can't see. Yes. Does that mean it's good? It's authentic, even in a way that you can't even see. But
it's the whole diamond in the rough principle. Like, you can't find that diamond until you get past all the coal that's surrounding it. Like, it's the same exact thing. Like, yeah, you might have something really good deep inside there, but you might have to scrap like half the piece to get to that jewel. And once you're all right with that, then you don't have to get so attached to it. That's the thing. It's the emotional attachment to. It's putting your work on a pedestal, which everybody starting out does.
And you have so much writing on it. Like, it's your identity.
It's your identity.
You're not good at anything yet, but you really want to see yourself. But I mean, I saw. But even on that note, like I saw a local band, and their live show was good, but they were sloppy. Like, they were sloppy. They were entertaining, I guess. So I'm like, okay, cool. And I watched another show with them 6 months later, and they were even more entertaining, but they were tight. I was like, oh my God. And I wanted to say like, and I did tell him, I was like, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but you guys have gotten a hell of a lot better. That was I'm excited because of not where you are now, but knowing where you were 6 months later, and you stuck with it. Like, I was like, dude, I hope you don't get offended by this compliment, because like you get the most improved award, but you were able
that's okay. You got to be careful with that one.
But like that to me is a compliment that I want to hear.
Right.
Like I was like, dude, your vocals sound better than these two. I was like, yes, thank you. And they're always
good.
Because they're basically implying that you didn't sound very good before.
Yeah, but it's true. Like you didn't sound very good, which led them to have that reaction. I think like the bands and the artists that are the most self-reflective are going to be the ones that show the most growth, which are going to be the ones that really, in my opinion, make it big and stick around the longest, because that means that they're going to be. I'm reading a book right now that talks about the story of Amazon, so I'm gonna drop the Amazon slogan on you. You're stubborn on your vision, but flexible on the details. You know, so you want to get better. You want to be that band. You want to be huge. You want to be whatever that looks like, whatever success looks like, and how you get there can mean whatever is, again, right for what you want to do. If you guys put on a great show, but you're sloppy, well, the thing you got to work on is getting tighter. If you guys are really tight, but you're boring to watch, well, the thing you got to work on is be more entertaining to watch, But at the end of the day, you're going to find yourselves, like you recognize it being the path to being the band that you want to be. So that's how you get there. And then once that's achieved, go find another car to chase and then do that,
I was watching this video of it was Korn. Like my dad's heard of Korn. He probably hasn't heard Korn, but my father's heard of a metal band. It's like, okay, you guys made
big.
it. Like,
they made
and he
it.
was in Brian Welch, whatever his name was. He was like, yeah, we've never been the tightest live band, but we write excellent songs, and that's where we focus. And so him able to be like, dude, there's a million better guitarists than me. I know where I am. I mean, I practice enough to like survive this live show, but our thing is not this.
Right.
And they're like, oh, it should be. It was like, maybe. I don't think so.
And that's the thing. They live for the crafting of the song. They don't really live to. They play live shows to sell CDs. Some people sell CDs again to play shows, play more shows. Like keep gas in their car to stay on the road. It goes to the same kind of idea of what do you feel is success, and they feel like what's right for them to be successful. That's why they sold so many records, because they made good songs for the people that love what they do. Like they did exactly what they needed to do. Yeah,
I think there's an implied thing is they say like, hey, this is our thing, and if we don't do this well, we failed. And like if you put all of your like, hey, this is what we do well, and like most I think like I struggle with like I'm just gonna do I'm gonna have a bunch of things, so in case this one fails, I'll just say it was this one and do that one, and then it allows you to never really assign responsibility.
You're moving the goalpost.
You're like, all right, well, I'll just keep changing the game. You're like, no, if I don't make this one or two things like the vision, as you were saying before, this is the main priority. I don't care if I get other stuff, cool, but if I don't get these first things, then I failed on this, and attributing that much pressure to it. Like the last time I'm like, hey, I think I'm X level of good at songwriting, production, whatever. And I was like, and if it doesn't meet my standards after like, I'm going to not listen to it for 3 months and come back, then I failed on those things, and I can see more accurately where I am. And some of the stuff I was like looking back, I was like, fuck, yes, good job.
It's
like,
so good.
I was like, God, this is
hot garbage.
You get better.
Yeah. And that's really important. I mean, there's some things like I've tried things like lyric writing. I'm not a lyricist. I stopped giving it any time of day because first of all, it took away from the things that I actually wanted to do. And it just wasn't something that I felt like if I were to do music, then I need to learn this skill to be able to call myself a musician. But when things like that are outside of your identity, you're going to figure that out whether you want to or not. you're gonna figure out that that's just not your thing, and that's where you could just go spend your time doing something else and outsource. You know, so I just get with lyric writers. I'm just like, you guys are way better and quicker at this than I am. So do your thing, get to work. I mean, I'll arrange, I will track, I will suggest edits to the lyrics. But if you say, here's a pen, here's a piece of paper, write me a functional song, I will stare at you. Purple. Yeah. What does this make you feel? Nothing, man. Like, here's a chord. Man, but it's.
Well, yeah, dude. I really enjoy this conversation, man. Like, I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, dude. Do you have an Instagram tag or any of that?
I do. Yeah, it's just my first name dot last name, Rahsaan.Lacey. RAHSAAN. Lacey, Lacey. It's all one word. It's on Instagram. And I'll also be launching a website pretty soon too. So I'll link that to you as well, just in case you want to drop that.
Yeah, and my Instagram is the Cam Gillette, because Cam Gillette was taken.
Oh man, yep. It's a popular name.
Yeah, I guess so. Dude, I really enjoyed it, man. I'll definitely hit you up later. I'll send you a link when this is posted, dude. All right, thanks everybody for listening. Later.
Thank you.